Hey, this is Justin Heggs,
And I'm Cam Hayden, and we are the creators of Death Metal Duck.
and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Justin Heggs and Cam Hayden about their new graphic novel, Death Metal Duck, from Black Panel Press. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Justin Heggs is the writer and co-creator of Wolf Hands with Nick Johnson. He's been noted for embracing comics as a medium that turns common tropes on their heads, matched with witty dialogue. Cam Hayden is a member of the National Cartoonist Society. He has a recurring strip called Roomies from the Tomb in Scary Monsters Magazine, a monthly comic page in Calgary's arts and entertainment publication, Scene Magazine, and contributes regularly to Freaky Magazine and Spread Love Comics. He has also appeared in CAR-Toons Magazine and various other anthologies. Together, Justin and Cam have created the graphic novel Death Metal Duck. The story of the 70-page Death Metal Duck graphic novel goes like this. Once the snarling frontman of thrash metal legends Pukehammer, Curtis Paul is now more dad than demon, trading mosh pits for parent-teacher meetings. But when a chance to reunite with the band arises, Curtis finds himself torn between diapers and distortion pedals, family dinners, and filthy riffs. So without further ado, here's my chat with Justin Heggs and Cam Hayden about their new graphic novel, Death Metal Duck, from Black Panel Press. So Justin Heggs and Cam Hayden, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate your time. Before I get going with all the questions, I would like to ask you each about the first comic book that you read. And Justin, I'll ask you to go first. What was the first comic book that you read?
Well, they've kind of just always been around. Comics in the newspaper were a lot bigger back in the day. So probably that, definitely Mad and Cracked. It just seemed like there was a lot more options for comics than just the comic shop. So it was a lot easier to stumble across. So it probably any one of those things.
Cool. How about you, Cam? What was the first comic book that you read?
The first comic book that I read was actually a bundle of comics. And my family has a cottage on Georgian Bay that has been in the family for 3 generations. So every summer we would go up to the cottage. And when I was probably 6 or so, I discovered this box of comics that had been probably my uncle's. So it was a bunch of comics from the 60s, I would say. And they were all weird ones. It was like Jerry Lewis and Bob Hope and Hot Stuff, Herbie the Fat Fury. And there was some superhero comics too, but they weren't really like your typical Spider-Man. They were it's like Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen and stuff like that. So everything was weird. So it's like this treasure trove of comics that I would be eager to get back to every summer. And then when I would come back home, I would look for comics. And I remember being sort of disappointed because I would get them home and be like, these comics aren't weird. So it was that, for whatever reason, this box of comics at the cottage was just full of this oddball stuff that kind of set the tone for everything else, I guess. And then Mad Magazine followed and everything clicked into place from there, I would say. That was my first comics experience, was these dusty old 60s weirdo comics.
That's cool. Yeah, Mad definitely had a big influence on a lot of folks, that's for sure, especially growing up. But I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today? And Justin, I'll ask you that question first.
Today, it's probably a little bit of everything, definitely music. My family definitely inspires me with what I'm writing now. I just like the art form in general. So basically, anything I'm picking up is usually inspiring to me. Often when I'm writing, I'll have just a couple of comics randomly around me to, I guess, catch the vibe.
Cool. How about you, Cam? Who or what inspires you to create today?
Lately, I'm very inspired by a lot of like older comics, like old comic strips and things like that. I've just found a treasure trove of Facebook Marketplace stuff that someone was selling off, and I got a ton of those Dick Tracy collections and Little Abner and stuff like that. So I've been digging around through those. They're super inspiring. There's a character in the Little Abner strip called Fearless Fosdick that's a takeoff on Dick Tracy that's super hilarious. I like seeing comics that have kind of survived the oceans of time, because it can get kind of dispiriting or whatever, grinding away in the studio, no one around. You don't know if anyone's ever going to read it or anything. So I'm inspired to see strips that have survived and are still enjoyable today and super well done. And like to hope that one day our stuff might be looked at down the road favorably. So probably
And
not.
speaking of today, you've got your new graphic novel, Death Metal Duck. And Justin, I'd like to ask you, how would you describe that story to someone?
Well, specifically, it's the story of an old thrash metal guitarist whose band has kind of had their glory days and gets an opportunity to go back on tour with them a little bit. And it's kind of just sort of an exploration of, I think, your dreams and your things you wanted to do that you maybe never got around to doing, or you didn't finish off the way you wanted to, and giving it another try.
Cam, what inspired you to create this story? I guess it wasn't Howard the Duck, right?
Well, I know that Howard the Duck inspired Justin. I know he was a big fan of that. So he was kind of the one that gave the directive that everyone's a duck. So so I guess Justin inspired me directly by instructing me to do that. But I liked all the old, like the Carl Barks Duck comics and Howard the Duck, and lots of the sort of animal-based strips were kind of, it's not something that I normally do, but in this case it was fun to do it, especially with the juxtaposition of the extreme metal, which I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff too, and to this day as well. So yeah, I don't know, just combining that was interesting.
And I should have been more specific. I should have said Howard the Duck comic as opposed to Howard the Duck movie. Definitely. Because Chip Zdarsky had a run on Howard the Duck, did he not?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought. That's cool. So, Justin, who is the target audience for this? I know you're supposed to write and create for yourself, but who ultimately is the audience you're targeting this book for?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to find out. I think it's definitely for, I don't know, I think anyone could enjoy it. Definitely music people. That's definitely a big part of it, being in bands and what that's like. But there's also a big component of parenting and just getting older, middle-aged, that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm excited to see who responds to it. As far as I can tell, it seems like it would be something that anyone could enjoy, as long as they don't mind a lot of swearing.
Right. Yeah. From what I gathered, the preview book that you sent along, I could tell it's a little bit on the mature side, let's say.
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted them to sort of sound real. Any of the dialogue like that, I just kind of put through my head how you would say it without holding back. And yeah, it definitely lands it in the mature category.
Right. I'd like to switch gears a wee bit, Cam, and ask you about your creative process. Can you walk me through the tools of what you use to create the artwork?
This one was done on Clip Studio on my iPad. Originally, we did the first issue many years ago. That was done just brush and ink and stuff. And I was just experimenting with ink washes and things like that. And then when we revisited it, I did it in Clip Studio. So digital was just, I'm usually juggling a few things. So it's quicker and just easier to work in it and make your corrections and stuff. The first version that I did was fairly laborious, and I wasn't, obviously, as the years went by, I was not as satisfied with that one. So it's done digitally, but it's done as someone who would rather be doing it on paper. So I think that even though I'm working digitally, I think it ends up looking kind of like newspaper strips, sort of. I like it to look kind of old school,
Yeah, and that's where you got the Little Abner
Fearless Fosdick type of style, right? Is that sort of one inspiration for you?
Yeah, that like Mad Magazine was a huge one. And then the comics in like National Lampoon and stuff. I like the kind of the more adult oriented stuff. Obviously when I was a kid, I was discovering that. I was like, well, these are crazy. But yeah, I really like the look of those old sort of newsprint comics. Even though I'm using digital, I tend to lean back in time instead of forward, if you know what I mean. It's not slick. I want it to look kind of rustic or whatever.
Cool. Now, Justin, I've got to ask you, because the book pays homage to the band performance experience, I gotta ask, is there a real life music tie-in happening anytime soon with the book?
The music that was used in the book, when I started writing it, I knew I wanted to write something that had music in it. So if I could make up a heavy metal song, or I'm just doing the lyrics or whatever. But a friend of mine's band, the Cadaver Dog, had an album out that I asked him if I could use the music. Any of the songs that they're singing in the book are actual songs, and there's a QR code in the book to be able to load that up on Spotify or Apple or whatever. So hopefully we can get them some streams as well. And then, yeah, I don't know if it sells enough. I would love to have, like I said, it's real bands, it's real music and real songs that they could play. I'd love to have something that involved music and the book, like a live show, something like that. I don't think we have the name recognition quite yet.
Well, that's very inventive. It's not too often you get to see a graphic novel that has its own soundtrack. That's kind of neat, isn't it?
It is. The way it worked out, and like the content of the songs and like some of the lyrics and stuff like that really fit with what's going on. The way it worked out was really surprising and super gratifying in the end.
Well, we've been talking about Death Metal Duck, but I've got to ask, do you have any other projects on the go? Maybe Cam will ask you if you've got anything we're working on.
Yeah, I put out a book a year usually. In Calgary here, I do a comics page in the local arts and entertainment monthly paper, and I submit comics to a magazine called Scary Monsters magazine, and then sometimes another magazine called Freaky Magazine, which is like Mad or Cracked. It's put out by Andrew Goldfarb, who is a former Mad Magazine cartoonist. So it's kind of like a bastard son of Mad Magazine. So every year I collect all of my strips and things that I've done for various publications and put them in these collections. So I've got a new one coming out this year, and it is called It's the Friends We Made Along the Way, and that's the fourth one of those so far. I do a kind of a Star Trek fan fiction thing with a buddy of mine who's a professor at the University of Calgary who teaches a Star Trek course, actually. So he writes the scripts and I illustrate them, and each little book is like an episode of a show featuring a unique crew that doesn't infringe on too many or any copyrights. The idea does, but we don't use any of their characters or anything.
Great. How about you, Justin? What other projects are you working on these days?
I have like a one-shot. It'll be like a 22-page. It's a painted story with the artist Nicole Grzecki. It's called The Zombie and the Ghost. She's working on right now that will hopefully be done sometime this year. She's just about halfway through doing all of that, and Cam is actually lettering that. There's going to be a music component with that one as well. And then I have just a bunch of other series that I've been writing, lots of stuff that's completed on my end that I can hopefully get rolling after Death Metal Duck comes out.
Nice. Now that the book is just about ready to come out, Cam, are there any plans for exhibitions or conventions to promote the book?
Yeah, our release show is going to be at the Calgary Expo. So we will be there for that. That's kind of the big kickoff. After that, I know Black Panel Press will be having it at a few shows. So I know they will be at TCAF. I will be at, oddly enough, Philadelphia Fan Expo. I got accepted for that one. So that'll be weird and exciting and scary. We've got another local show here in Calgary called Panel One. Probably have it there. And there's a few other applications out, but we'll see how that works out. So far, not great, but you never know.
Right. Well, with everything that you have on the go today and in the future, wondering where people will find you online. And Justin, I'll ask you if you could tell the folks where you'll be.
Sure. I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky, just under Justin Heggs. Death Metal Duck is on both of those places as well. Death Metal Duck on Blue Sky and Death Metal Duck PH on Instagram.
And Cam, where can people find you online?
You can just search my name, Cam Hayden, or my handle at Lance Goiter. If you go to Instagram, I think there's a link tree with links to buy my other books and stuff, big cartel sites and things like that. Instagram's probably the most active one, I guess.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Just that I'm really excited about this book coming out. It's been like over 10 years in the making. The one we put out in 2017, it was the first issue, basically. First 20 pages was awesome, and I loved it. And I think we sold, I don't know, less than 100 copies of it. But to finally see it all come together like this blows me away. And yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, and we're really grateful that Black Panel Press are taking a chance with it. We showed it to a few publishers, and I think Black Panel Press were pretty quick to say that they were interested in it, which was kind of a huge boost for us. So we're really grateful for that.
Thanks to Justin and Cam for the chat. You can discover more about Justin Heggs on Instagram at Justin Heggs. You can discover more about Cam Hayden online at lancegoiter.bigcartel.com and on Instagram at lancegoiter. You can discover more about Death Metal Duck online at blackpanelpress.com and on Instagram at deathmetalduckph. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators about making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2026.